The following is a Live the Dream Media production.
Hello and welcome to the Faith Family Schools podcast with your host Christopher DeSimone.
All right, everyone, welcome back to the Faith Family Schools podcast. I'm Christopher DeSimone. Remember, find out everything about what we're doing at faithfamilyschools.com. If you have any suggestions for cool guests or complaints, go to faithfamilyschools@gmail.com. And making his debut today is my big brother, Joseph DeSimone. How are you doing, my friend?
Great to be here with you, Chris.
And it's something together on my radio show that I do called Wake Up Tucson. We always... Because he has a company called Blue Chip Planning, we do a lot of discussions about financial stuff. But him and I actually have more discussions about faith stuff more than we talk about financial stuff. And being that this is Faith, Family, and Schools, I thought you'd be a good guest to have. So thank you for being here.
Well, what's going on financially right now, you need an incredible amount of faith. So it suits its purpose.
So I want to do kind of a little bit of an overview of our discussions of kind of our discussions about faith and talking about because the purpose of the podcast is there has been a degradation of faith, right? The family unit, and then what's gone on in K through 12 and colleges is really why we're at where we're at. When people say, man, why do my elected officials horrible? Well, let's go back to the last 50 years of a degradation. So when you look back at the faith, we're going to talk about society, right? And we talk about faith, and we talk about the last 50 years. Joe and I are both cradle Catholics. Talk about what have you seen, like when you've looked back at America in the last 50 years, and it's struggling with the faith question of what's going on in the world.
Well, I think the big picture is that the founding fathers of our country, to make democracy work, it's based on faith. Actually, it's based on our Judeo-Christian values. So God is part of the equation, and God of Christianity. So we don't have to put it to any one denomination. We certainly don't have to make it Catholic, but God within the Judeo-Christian narrative of centuries, right?
Right.
When you, in my opinion, when you take God out of democracy, this is the beginning of the degradation. And you say, well, that's interesting, but why? Because when you take God out of democracy and all you talk about is economy, economics, you have a subform of communism, of socialism. And that's exactly what many people feel like has crept into this country.
I on the show a couple days ago, I talked about I say my birth year, 1970, when it kind of felt like that's our ground zero for this. But our friend Gary sent me an email and said, well, 1962 is when they took prayer out of schools, right? And he kind of called that kind of the start of the slippery slope of eliminating God from...
They took prayer out of schools, and then any Catholic would know Vatican II started in 1962.
Oh, that's true, too.
Okay? Whether you're Catholic or not, there's 1.5 billion worldwide Catholics, so it's the heavyweight in the room, right?
Sure.
And so those reforms or changes started in 62 as well.
So maybe I apologize for all my 1970s. I was off by 8 years, but we're constantly learning here at Faith Family Schools. So when we talk about the church in general, so we're talking about the idea of that belief in a deity that we are born out of, but at the same time there is also kind of the those pesky things called the Ten Commandments, right? There's the greatest commandments of love one another, love God with all your heart, all your mind, and then of course love one another as you would be loved. is that something that's also part of losing the faith aspect in society, that we're getting away from those, and that's what we see as now we're just doing pick and choose, not just pick and choose theology, but almost like your conscience is just it's not informed by anything but, I don't know, TikTok now. What do we see in relation to the standards of living, right? The wisdom of the desert fathers and mothers. How would you, of the Old Testament and then Christ's gospel, talk about that kind of, informing living life, I guess.
Well, as soon as we've taken the 10 Commandments out of school, right? So there goes the foundation of our Judeo-Christian history. And so now, by removing that, what did you replace the 10 Commandments with? We also had taken prayer out of school. God forbid you say a prayer because somebody may be offended by that prayer.
Right.
Look what's going on in schools today. So what did we replace the 10 Commandments and prayer with today?
That's actually a pretty scary question. So what's happened is, and of course, and during that, taking prayer out of school, parents kind of started taking themselves out of the equation of raising their kids, right? Because they believe, school's there to teach my kids. That's what they do. I don't have to teach my kids, right? And I think the teachers' unions and, government as a whole like the idea that there was a portion of America that was handing their kids into this godless arena and saying, you take care of that. They're yours for 8 hours a day.
And they took advantage of it, right?
Yeah.
Because now you have the lunch program. You have these social outreaches because the theory is the parents are not taking care of their kids. They're not giving them lunch. Society's not. So they're going to come to school in the summertime when there's no school, and you come aboard you're part of our program. So I feel, and maybe this is jumping one step, so we've replaced the 10 Commandments and prayer in our school with these new social initiatives.
Right.
Based on, and this word is important, the brotherhood of man.
So it sounds great. What's the real meaning of the? I'm on video now. I can do this. Air quotes of brotherhood of man.
It kind of goes back, back to 1962, and has been progressing, that we are a society that is independent of God. God may exist, but we don't need to worry about that because we will sub-exist without God.
So it reminds me of the stories of the communists in Cuba where they would say, all right, let's all pray to God for bread, right? And they were all, the communists would sit there with the kids and no bread would happen up here. And then they go, here's Fidel Castro. Let's pray to him. Here's bread to eat, right? I feel like that's almost been slowly happening, right? Where we're replacing government, we're replacing that relationship with God with a relationship with government, and people who like big government like people who are dependent on government.
We say in theology, same devil, just different person.
So when you look at where we're at in America right now, I think it was the Southern Baptist Church. I got to give them credit. I don't think the Catholic Church would ever do this, but the Southern Baptists came out with a report that we've lost this many million parishioners in a 10-year period. So let's talk about relevance of church to the average American family right now. Is it at its all-time lowest? Am I missing something? What do you think?
Certainly from graphics perspective, attendance has been going down since 1962. But I think COVID exacerbated it because our Christian leaders, including the Pope, decided to shut everything down. That you were told growing up as a child that going to church on Sunday was very, very important. God wanted us to be at church on Sunday. And then now, during this crisis, this of the COVID pandemic, right? Stay home. It's more important to stay home and do the right thing for the brotherhood of men.
It's coming up again.
Than go to church and then risk exposing your neighbor to this virus. And so that was a strong nail in the coffin for Sunday.
Right.
And then what I think exacerbated that was we're now taking this holy moment, this holy hour, this sense, the body of Christ coming together for a holy hour. We then put it on the internet, right, and we cheapened it.
We did.
And then now people could sit there having their breakfast, their bacon and eggs, and now they're scrolling through the liturgy. Well, I don't like the homily, or gee, just reading's boring. Let me fast forward. Gee, I don't like the way Father looks today.
Or you're going to mute that part. You could hit the mute button.
So, I mean, they already watered down the liturgy to 49 minutes, 39 minutes. Now you have the ability to edit the liturgy, and you could make it your own liturgy, almost like myliturgy.com.
Right.
You could be done with 7 minutes. And
for all of you who thought 55 minutes was too long, you can now get it in 7.
And in some families, I'm sure it was less.
It reminds me, believe it or not, it reminds me of colleges, right? So before the COVID thing, what happened was colleges said, you can't do online. It's not the same. Our professors are the most amazing professors on the planet. You just got to see them to believe it, right? COVID shows up like online's great. It's the same thing. Don't worry about it. Even though before online was going to cost them money and jobs and infrastructure and things like that. Churches that closed down, same thing. I mean, they literally told you, I forgot what number it is. I'm not good at numbers. Keep holy the Sabbath, right? Right from the 10 Commandments, which usually meant that was mandatory. You should be going to Sunday Mass. Does that sound right?
Absolutely.
And then Tony Fauci comes around and like, we're okay. You don't have to keep holy the Sabbath day. Go sit in your jammies. You can have service on one side and the Arizona Cardinal game on the other TV, and we'll be fine. It's the same thing.
He trounced the Pope, the bishops, religious leaders.
Mormon church shut down, which I couldn't believe they did it as much as they did.
Big Christian churches. Well, and then you don't want to be threatened losing your tax-exempt status as a Christian church either, do you?
I am waiting for a church to say, "Come get me. Come go. You want to make a line in the sand. I'm going to talk. I'm going to get out there, and because they have these clergy that are too. They always have that. They always say, "I don't want to get rid of my tax-exempt status." Get on the pulpit and say, you know something? Abortion on demand, which is they're trying to get in Arizona, bad. We need to get out there and go do something, right? All of these, go speak the truth to power and say, you know something, IRS, come get me.
Speak truth to power, but religious leaders that are overseeing the large segments of Christianity, they're stigmatizing those preachers and pastors that speak the truth. They're throwing them under the bus or to the lion. Let's say the lions. I like that better.
Very
They're
good.
throwing these faithful preachers, men and women of God, to the lions for speaking the truth because it's interfering with their hierarchical level of being involved with the government and profiting with all this money that's been printed in the last 10 years.
Well, if you look at just go find out how much your local church makes through their NGO, as we like to say, through government contracts. If you're a Catholic listening right now, if you found out, I think it's 50% of the Catholic Church's money is coming from the federal government, and you say, "Geez, why does the Catholic Church make these weird decisions?" Don't blow the money. Sad to say. I know that's not. I think Christ said. Give to Caesars what's unto Caesars, give to God what's under God. And I think the Catholic Church and some of these other churches have thrown that into the mud, sad to say.
Goes back into our picture of this nation is not indivisible under God.
So you were talking about the indivisible under God. Talk about the taking the Pledge of Allegiance.
Well, certainly. That was one of the things that we hijacked out of schools was the Pledge of the Allegiance. You know, a country indivisible under God. And now we have a divided country not under God.
Correct.
And now we're reaping bad benefits from that choice. So we had taken out the 10 Commandments. Certainly had taken prayer out of school. And then we took the Pledge of the Allegiance out of school because in the name, you know, for the sake of the brotherhood of men, or
Thank
men
you.
and women, right?
Right.
Because somebody may be offended. And because somebody may be offended by prayer, the Pledge of the Allegiance, or 10 Commandments, then we had to remove it from society.
And I think why that indivisible under God, whoever wrote the Pledge of Allegiance, I'm going to be very ignorant here, right? That indivisible under God, and that under God part is the idea that I think they saw that we were all children of God, right? And at the same time, there was some sort of common value system because of that relationship that we had with God. And so now that we've gotten rid of God out of the public square and schools, what's the number one thing people say about America? I can't believe how divided it is.
Undivided and unclarified. Remember the golden rule. The golden rule, do unto others as you would do unto yourselves. Why is there a moral crisis right now in major Ivy League universities? Do unto others as you would do unto yourself. People are terrorized, brutalized, every unspeakable thing, and they don't know if that warrants a moral decision.
Yeah, no. It's crazy. All right, when we come back on our second episode with Brother Joe, we're going to talk about what you can do to educate yourself and your family, and maybe your priest or pastor, on try to improve this one family at a time in America. So, Brother Joe, thanks for part one, and we'll come back for part two.
Thank you, Brother Chris.
All right, that's my big brother, Joe DeSimone. I'm Chris DeSimone. Remember, faithfamilyschools@gmail.com if you want to communicate with us, and then go to faithfamilyschools.com and find us on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify, and gently hit a like. No smashing. All right, you guys have a great day.